our show On the Bright Side, where we feature amazing influencers who are making such a positive difference in our world today. I am so blessed to have not only a great guest, but also family. This is John Atkinson. Hi, John.
Hi, Kristin. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Good. Oh my gosh. John is a young man, but he's done so much in his life, and we have so much to talk about. So John is a world traveler. He has Globe-Tron. We'll talk about that. And he is a health and wellness guru. And he was a high-level soccer athlete for a long time. So we'll talk about that. And he is just my dear cousin, and he has so much to say. So I just wanted to introduce everybody to John Atkinson. Hey, John.
Hi. Thanks, Kristin. Thanks On the Bright Side for having me today. Full of gratitude to be your guest today, and so excited to dig into my story and, share so much positivity, in these unknown times around the world, and and I be a, bright, positive impact today in many lives.
Oh, I'm so excited for you to be here. I know every time I get together with you, John, there's always a bright side. We always concentrate on the bright side. So that's been so fun. So John, talk to us about your personal background. You live in Southern California.
Yeah. So born and raised here in Southern California, beautiful Laguna Niguel.
That's nice.
I have a family of 6, one of 4 kids. I'm the youngest. I have 3 older sisters. So learned so much throughout my life just from having older siblings, learning from their, positive moves and also not so positive moves. And so, but yeah, native to California. My passion growing up was soccer. Have done so much through that, and through that experience has really inspired me recently and over probably the last 10 years to travel. So it's been great so far, and so many new goals coming up with, and I'm just excited to share it with you guys today.
I can't wait to unpack the story. So John, talk to us. So I remember from, you always had so much energy, like since you were walking, I was like, John just didn't walk. He walked around the house. He walked all my sisters. He was the youngest. So my sisters, my 2 sisters, and we would always, and his sisters, we'd always be like, oh, where's John? You were off and running.
We lost him again.
Like, where's John? Oh no. But he's always been such a good sport, and your sisters are such high achieving, women too. And so they've been a positive influence in my life, and I know they have in yours too. So you've been an athlete your entire life. Well, your family's pretty athletic too. Yeah. Tell us about that.
It really started for my own experience in sports through my sisters. Obviously, having a big family and tagging along, on the weekends or to weekly practice, and just really watching my sisters grow up through sports, specifically through soccer mostly. One of my other sisters, Caitlin, she was a high-level gymnast. So that was incredible to just see her perform at that high of level and, that attention to detail. But really, I saw my true passion was on the soccer field. Would remember halftime, each game, and going out and just kicking the ball. And one day asking my parents, when am I going to be able to have my own uniform and get out on the field? And they were laughing. And I was like 4 or 5. So here in the States, a lot of the majority of people play soccer. It's the number 1 kids sport to begin with. So I started out on the recreational level. And about when I was 11, I always had these jerseys sent to me from my dad's best friend who lives in England. And I didn't know what these jerseys were. Obviously, soccer's still considered new here in the States. And one day I asked my dad, I'm like, why do I keep getting these like shirts, these jerseys, these soccer bags? And my dad's like, oh, that's Southampton. That's, Colin's favorite team. And this is when I was starting to love soccer. And I had to make a decision to continue recreational or go on to play club. And here in the States, it's a lot different system than Europe, where Europe, you know, you're discovered through your talent. And here in the States, it's really pay to play, which is kind of opposite. And, sometimes why we've struggled at the national level here and the growth of the game, because it's pay to play. So there's a lot of politics as far as, hey, I'm paying this amount. Why isn't my kid playing these minutes? Or why is my kid, we've traveled halfway across the state or maybe the nation, and my kid didn't even get to play. Whereas in Europe, you're judged off how well you play, and that's how it should be. There shouldn't be a pay to play, type scenario. But like I'm saying, it's new here and it's still growing. But when I was growing up, it was still very new. So 11, I had to make a decision, decided to go that route, was very thankful. My parents, hardworking parents, like, as that was, I was able to, play at a high level in the club, which had traveling. I remember my first trip when I was like 12 or 13 to Minnesota to play a big tournament.
That's right.
It was incredible. It was my first time away from home. My parents didn't come, and it was just, I knew, I was like, hey, I love soccer so much, and to experience it in a different state with different players, different talent, than I'm used to, different playing styles. I just knew it was a good fit for me. And through those experiences here in California and future trips, I just gained a lot of experience, but also through a lot of great coaches. As you know, with you having kids, Southern California is a hotbed of talent, no matter if it's sports or education or, even
Art.
in business, art. Yeah, it's just a hotbed of great people, and from all over the world too. So that influence, I got higher up into the levels, and before high school, I was at the highest you could be in club, which is Premier, and my goal was always to play professionally in Europe. So when I was actually 14, a guy from the East Coast with connections in Europe came out to Southern California, locally here by my house, to create a all-star team to go play in Europe. So anybody that's been part of the tryout process in life, you're nervous, you don't know what to think. You're trying to, it's very, sports are very, obviously your talent, but also the mind plays a huge part. I would say 90% is, your mindset, and the 10% is your skills that you've really been given from God. So the tryouts went really well, and I got to go that summer for a European tour of 4 different countries, Italy, Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. And that really changed how I looked at soccer. Before that, I was in love with it. It was my passion, but to see it on a world level, it just opened my eyes, like, wow, this could be a reality. But my biggest question and my biggest takeaway from that trip was, how do I continue that level? How do I go back to a country as large as America, where we're dominated by American football, baseball, all these other sports that take away some of the best athletes. So professional soccer was still growing. It's called the MLS. And, I was like, I'm going to play one day for the Los Angeles Galaxy. And I just was hitting that in my head all day, all practice, every game, like, who's watching, because in Europe, people get scouted every weekend, every practice. It's very cutthroat compared to this environment. So came back, played in high school. I was fortunate to play locally at Santa Margarita Catholic High School, and they were known for their soccer program. And that was one of the reasons why I went there. And in my sophomore year, we won CIF in state. So that was incredible. Yeah, that was
Oh my God.
that was what an experience at 16. And just to be hearing about it, you hear more American football, like, oh, well, they went CIF state, at my school. And to do it in soccer, it was really a dynasty that Santa
Wow.
Margarita built, and actually produced a lot of several professional players out of the program. But a lot of people that know, high school soccer isn't as big as club soccer. To go back to it, it's pay to play club soccer. So you're going to get more exposures. You're going to go to college showcases. You're going to have pro scouts looking, is this guy ready to make the leap, before college? But I was at a time where it was kind of like bubbling, right? So it was getting large. We were in these World Cups at the national level, doing really well, the likes of Landon Donovan, some other great players as well. And so I had to make a decision as far as like, how do I get to a professional level in a country that maybe isn't equipped yet with the system? So I prayed about it, but also I had to perform. It's like you could pray all day long, but you have to go out there and do your thing. So I was a standout player, practiced my craft, had downtime, was in my backyard, calling friends, playing in the streets, practicing, getting there early, excited, staying after. So Los Angeles Galaxy and MLS, as a professional organization, opened up the academy system. So the academy system, to put in comparison to the Europe, which soccer has been around for over 100 years, and MLS possibly 20, 25 years, started the academy system. So where Europe, they're so far ahead, they choose players at 7 or 8, and that's what I mean by cutthroat.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
Gosh.
so to be a part of that, I found out Los Angeles Galaxy at the time was having these open tryouts. So I'm like, what is that about? I asked my club coach. Obviously, again, with politics, I had great coaches leading up to this, and my main coach was incredible. He gave me, the tools to get to that next level, but I could see where he's coming from. He wants to keep his best players. He's getting paid to do a job. He's at a club.
Right.
We're at a premier club. But I asked him, I go, hey, what are these about? And I furthered my research because he was kind of like, oh, I don't know. I kind of know. And it was open tryouts. So, but before that, there was open tryouts for a thing called Sum Cup, which was in Denver. And it was the top 10 MLS teams to have a tournament. And
Wow.
yeah, I
Oh
made
my
it again through the tryouts, through the nerves, through about 7 weeks of brutal, intense tryouts. And it was kids coming from 75-mile radius. So anywhere from, the border of Chula Vista up to, San Luis Obispo, out to almost like, out to the desert. They were all coming into LA trying to make this team. And I was like, who are these players? And some players
Wow.
were trying to fly in and pretend they were living in LA. And you have these people coming in from Europe, Africa, South America. And I'm like,
Oh
they're not local,
my gosh. So they were supposed to be local. Were they
Yeah,
supposed
they were supposed to
Oh,
be local.
oh yeah.
And so I'm looking around going, okay, like, what are my chances? But I believed in myself and,
Mhm.
worked really hard, and made that team. So we had an incredible 1 week in Denver. I did really well, played, um, consistent enough to, hey, on the way back, hey, we're just to let you know, we're going to be starting these academy teams. We want you to try out. There's no guarantee, but you have a good shot because you've been seen. So again, back to the tryouts. So we come home, we have like, this is even longer. It's almost a 2-month process, Kristin. So
Oh
I had
wow.
like, yeah, I had like seven of my, teammates from my team trying out with me, and some of us were carpooling, and
Uh-huh.
you kind of feel bad because I was making the cuts and
Oh,
and some people weren't. So you're looking around going, not only my teammates but my friends, that you've known. I was on that team for about 3 years, so you're looking around going, wow, I thought that guy was pretty good, but again, tryouts happen. You're put
yeah,
under immense pressure. You're
right.
trying to make a professional team as prestigious, the number one team in North America, Los Angeles Galaxy. And so I made it down to the last, probably 3 tryouts. We had 3 more to go. And my club coach, again, with the politics, great guy, came up to me and said, hey, did you make the team? Like, I need to know because we're going to come up to falls, basically kind of toying with me as far as,
Mhm.
hey, if you make the team, I got to fill your spot type of thing, which
Mhm.
which is totally fine. But at the same time, it's like we got to show a little bit of patience. So
Yep.
it was hard to navigate that. And so I had to ask, believe it or not, Los Angeles Galaxy, like, hey, it's kind of awkward. What are the chances of me? I'm having pressure from, my club coach. And
Oh,
I totally remember this coach was from, where was he from? He was English, and he's like, yeah, tell your coach, don't ask any more questions. You're on the team. So I was like, but he's like, yeah, he was like, you can't tell anybody that you
oh
made
my,
it because we haven't sent out the emails. Just show up, not
oh my,
pretend, but keep doing your thing and congratulations. And I was like, oh my gosh. And
oh
it was a
my
lifetime achievement. It's one of those things where, you look at your life and you've worked so hard for something, and then for it to come
God.
about, and it's just the greatest feeling. So it was almost like you're in a dream, right? You're just kind of
Yeah.
on the Los
Oh my
Angeles
gosh.
Galaxy, and to be part of history it's the first academy, they call it like scholars, so it's
Right.
almost like classes. So I was on the U18s for almost 3 years, and
Oh
you're
my
the first
gosh.
class through the academy, so you could always take that the rest of your life. And it was such a great experience. And then from that, though, again with the system, is it's a little bit different than Europe. So you get to a point where you're in high school. I didn't play my senior year because I was playing professionally for Los Angeles, which was totally fine. We were traveling. Um,
Hmm.
I did like a senior trip almost per se through Galaxy. We got to go and play in England against the top academy teams, the likes of Manchester City. We played West Ham, Norwich, Premier League teams that a lot of people know, a lot of, American fans are crazy about. So that experience, I was like, man, like we're there, like our team is there, we're gonna make it. And then it's just the letdown as far as the infrastructure. Again, there's the first team. So at the time, everyone knows David Beckham. He was on the team, on the first team. Yeah, I
Oh,
got to meet him. Humblest guy ever.
wow.
Really helped grow the game here. So it was just, I wouldn't say, I mean, timing is everything, but it's really, I was part of laying the foundation, Kristin, for this next crop. Obviously, out of maybe both squads, so maybe 30 kids, only one made it. So it's even less percentages in Europe, and those start at younger ages, and they call them like rejects. I mean, it sounds kind of harsh, but these kids, might get rejected by Manchester United, the most prestigious club in England, and then they're kind of bouncing around, but they still play pro, but they're known, their name's a little tainted because they
Mhm.
were a reject, but those players turn out great, and I
Yeah.
watch them and I enjoy watching those. So but through that experience really opened my eyes to the world, because
Yeah.
as you know, soccer is the world's game. It's a
Yeah.
universal language. um, and it's just always been a passion of mine. And after, that Galaxy process, it was like I had to go play college ball. So I got, was lucky enough to play here locally for Cal State Fullerton. But from going from a professional environment to a college environment, totally different, which is, totally fine.
Right.
And to go that route, it didn't pan out for me, but, so many great memories,
Oh, yeah.
just of the game and what it's brought. And now seeing it like with proper infrastructure, kids making it, like family friends that I'm like, wow, I knew you like when you were 12 and I was, 16, 17, and they're playing pro now. So my biggest takeaway is, even though I didn't make it, laid an intricate part of, American history with soccer, as far as laying that foundation, not just with Galaxy, but, nationwide with all these other players that were a part of that. And it definitely is a
Wow.
historical moment. So,
And then look back, I mean, I love your story. I heard it all from you firsthand. I'd hear it from your mom, at holiday gatherings and things like that.
mhm.
But it's so great to hear your story. And, now thinking about what you're doing, I'm like, oh my gosh, that was such a big piece of your puzzle, but it opened your eyes to you, like laying the groundwork for where you are now.
Mhm,
I
mhm,
mean, I know like your family's always, and your dad was a huge traveler,
mhm.
huge traveler. And, but it's just so great to hear the story. And then from there, you went on to traveling, right? Did you go from after
Yeah.
you finished? So tell us that story.
Yeah. So, like you're saying, I think so many times in life, like we're defined by maybe one thing,
Mhm.
And I think right now in this moment of what's going on in the world, it's such a great time to reinvent yourself, and I think of your parents, my parents, who stands out is Grandpa Skipper, and reinventing himself so many times. And I
Yeah.
think like just reflecting on that alone, like, you know, to the people listening right now is like, you're not just defined by one thing, you're not, it's so, life is so multifaceted. It's like, and things are evolving all the time. So even though like the soccer was ending for me, I knew it was like you're saying, like the next bridge, like the next stepping stone to something that
Mhm.
was great. But I knew at that point it was defining me, and it was like, oh, I like my friends or family or, people that I don't, oh, I know John, he's the soccer player. And
Mhm.
as you get towards the end of that, you think like, I want to be, you go about life, you want to be more than just known for one thing. You
Yeah.
want to be known for your life and your impact. So
Yeah.
it was kind of like anything ending. I was in college, I was 20 years old. I was there for soccer, not necessarily for the school part, I'll be
Mhm.
honest.
Yeah.
I
Well,
was,
that's, you hear that happening with
yeah.
athletes, because it's
And
just so much time.
mhm,
And
mhm. And
so,
it's the double job, it's the grind. You're in the weight room at 5 and you're at study hall till 10 at night, and you have to do it all over again. So it's like, and if you don't, and you're just a kid, and I think that's
yeah.
something I realized too, is like we put so much pressure on our youth to be like, what do you want to major in? What do you want to do?
Mhm.
Without having that perspective of just let them live through it, let them flow through those 4 years. I mean, 4 years, if you and I both think about, that's like a blur, sometimes it goes quick. And for me, it was like, I didn't have any other why than soccer, and that was that. I didn't realize that till the end. I go, wow,
Mhm.
I didn't invest in loving school,
Mhm.
and that was
Mhm.
my reason, is like, I just don't like school. I love soccer more. I'm gonna, well, as everyone knows here in the States, it's like, if you're not performing in the classroom, you're not going to be playing, you know?
Mhm.
So I think it was kind of like, it was a preview of what was going to happen, like I remember my first year, I was like, came in like this guy, John and my teammate from Galaxy, these guys are professional players. And it's like the seniors were just like looking at us like these guys must, like, we had a target on our back, it was, and to go, like I'm saying, from a professional environment to now you're away from home, you have all these other dealings, but to have that pro name to your name, that's big shoes to fill at a young 18-year-old, and you're walking into a locker room where these guys have made traditions at Fullerton and a brotherhood, and you're trying to fit in. But yeah, so to get back to it, I didn't have my why on what I wanted to do in school. So that's why I kind of twisted out of the school part, because I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I had a lot of pressure on the field, but I also had a lot of pressure in the classroom because I wasn't doing well. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had a great counselor, but I changed my major like 4 different times. And as you know, the more you change it, it's like starting over again, like, oh, I got to go do this. Right.
So,
and like you're saying, it's time and it's money. And obviously I was lucky to be on scholarship, but I was in the young mindset of, oh, I'm on scholarship, school's being paid for. I had to take out student loans to live up there. Obviously being part of a big family, like my parents paid for my high school, which forever grateful for that. But for 4 kids, that's a lot of money. So I had to take my own student loans out and, pay for, my apartment, things like that. So I was growing up quick, like a lot of, young Americans, young students, even worldwide have to do. But I didn't realize the importance of what's my favorite subject? What do I want to do? I kind of knew what I wanted to do. But it wasn't like a definite, why do I want to do what I want to do? But I didn't want to put that pressure on myself because I was young. So it was very conflicting here.
Right. Well, and you had so much pressure with sports, and you're so laser focused, on doing your best that you can, that it was almost like by the time you came to think about what my other interests are, you were too tired probably and too emotionally exhausted, I would think, and it's stressful. Like you're having stress on the soccer team, and with the different players and how you're coming in as a pro, with these college kids, or college athletes. I know that it must have been overwhelming, it must have been.
And a lot of people don't really talk about that side, and I'm big on mental health. And at the end of this, it's like, I had a dear friend, he's now has passed, but he was a psychiatrist. And I'm like, hey, Bill, this is what I'm going through. Like, with the soccer gig, I actually had like a career ending injury, not anything harsh. I mean, it was a knee injury. It was my second, going in my 3rd year. It was my MCL. Didn't tear or anything, but as anybody knows that has had an injury, it's just, you're never the same, in your mind or how you play. So I had a feeling it was like all gonna come down. I was getting down on myself because I'm like, I worked so hard. I just had this incredible experience with the Galaxy, somewhat a good experience at Fullerton. Don't get me wrong there. We played in a great conference. I was exposed to so many great things, so many great players, different insights in the game and at a different level. But on the flip side is when I was changing my major all the time, it's like you kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel going, wow, your time's very limited. You start your eligibility too with sports. So it's like, after I got injured, I had a redshirt, and then I was trying to come out in spring and play. It was just this laundry list of like things that were happening, like you're saying, as far as like overwhelming. Like I didn't have an outlet to talk to anybody about it. Like I talked to people, but as you know, if you go through something and you can't relate to what's going on, it's kind of hard to get advice, right? So I didn't feel like I was alone in the process. I just felt like in the aftermath of it all, it's like, it was my decision. I didn't reach out to enough people and say, hey, I need help. I need help rehabbing my knee. I need help in school. I need help. Hey, I'm really struggling, you know? And I feel like sometimes our youth, we don't speak up, you know, we think we have that young edge, you know, that ego. Hey, we're away from home. We don't want to call mom and dad and say like things are falling apart, you know, but you know, I have a great relationship with my parents, but I didn't want to let them know what was going on, you know, 100%. Cause I don't want them to worry about me or, hey, you need to come home. What's going on? This and that. I wanted to try to do life, you know, and try to figure things out. So as I sifted through it all, I came to a point where I was finished with soccer, but I was trying to, in that spring season when I wasn't getting any playing time, which I was just kind of like shocked because those games don't matter. And the coach was like trying to win the World Cup with the same starting 11, which a lot of players didn't agree. It was just a roller coaster ride. And so in NCAA terms, which college sports are NCAA, you can't transfer to another school without cutting ties with your current school. Otherwise, it's a violation. So as a young kid, you're kind of like, how do I navigate this? I'm trying to like contact schools that were trying to recruit me in high, you know, they knew me as a youth pro. They're, oh yeah, I remember you. How's everything going? You know, oh, do you have tape of you after your injury? They asked. And I'm like, I don't. Like, I only have tape, you know, because I wasn't getting playing time. I redshirted. I was out. So I didn't know how to navigate it. And one would say, my parents, you just got to finish your scholarship. You know, get your degree, you know. But Kristin, to be frank, I wasn't happy. You know, I wasn't happy of going through the motions of school and then my love and passion just kind of falling apart right in front of me, you know? And so I made a decision. I remember it, you know, very clear. I came home and I had dinner with my mom at one of my favorite restaurants. And I just broke down crying. I go, hey, I'm going to quit school. Soccer, you know, as you know, soccer is done. I'll most likely move home. I don't know what to do. And at that point, I would say I was, you know, depressed. I didn't know. Here you have something you've loved your whole life, something, again, you've been defined as like, wow, John's he's up there. He's making moves. He'll probably make it, you know, and to not feel that, you know, that level for yourself, but also, you know, people supporting you or, you know, just expectations getting in your mind, it gets to you. So my mom's like, well, you're going to have to figure out something. Like, you're more than welcome to move home and things like that. So I decided to pack up from Fullerton, move home. She's like, you got to get a job. You got to figure it out. And I kind of went into, I would say, a dark place at that time. I was, you know, going through the motions. I didn't know what to do. Soccer was such a big part of my life. I was like, well, what do I do without it? You know, I don't have a college degree. And then as everyone knows who has ever taken out a loan, whether college loan or just any loan at all, there's interest, hey, you have to pay, here's your bill, you know, and people don't talk about that either in college. And it's an issue in our country of, you know, $1 trillion in debt for students. And I was actually in $42,000 in debt. So here you have, I moved home, I'm, you know, in a dark spot already. I start getting this mail, like, you have to pay in 6 months. I don't have a job. Like, what do I do? You know? So I had to quickly figure something out. And I was sitting in my room one day and my mom opens up the door. She was like, hey, like, how are you doing? I was like, I'm okay. Like, I'm trying to figure it out. Like, she knew how much debt I was in and what's going on. And she's like, you got to get a job. You can't just sit here, you know, and do nothing. So, hold on. So she's like, Whole Foods is opening right by the old Tall Mouse, which was like a little
Oh yeah,
like
I remember
school
that.
shop. Yeah. So like an arts and crafts store. And I'm like, really? In that bit, like in that shopping center? Like, are you like, really? She's like, yeah, you should apply. Like, what are you gonna do, John? You moved home, you got to get something going. So I'm like, all right, mom's right. You don't want to give in. Like, mom's right. I gotta do something, right? So
We like to hear that.
yeah, I look it up and I'm like, wow, it's opening soon. I need to hop on this. So I apply on Sunday. I get an interview on Thursday, and I get a job in the produce department. And I'm like
You.
so excited because with my background growing up, I used to go to the store with my dad all the time, the grocery store. I always loved going with him. I used to go to a place called the farmer's market or
Mm-hmm.
farm to market, and
Mm-hmm.
it just the lead displays were always fresh fruit, fresh veggies. The workers would let me sample anything. My dad would, buy me something exotic, from the tropical category or something like that. And he just really instilled in me like how to cook, how to shop, and, something that everyone should know how to do. But it really just stuck to me. So when I found out I was in the produce department, I was excited, but I didn't know what to expect, right?
Right.
I didn't know the journey it was going to bring me, 8 years later,
Yeah.
being in the food industry and being so involved with health and wellness. And so I, joined a great team, had so many leaders. And the great thing about being an ex-athlete is you just have that inner athlete in you. You're not, you want to compete against others, but it's like you're just competing against you. Like, can I be better than yesterday, right?
Yeah.
So I would just show up, do my thing, and I progressed quickly, be like a team educator, which you educate the new hires, which I love education and
Yeah.
educating. Obviously, my dad was a teacher for so long. And um, then into like a supervisor role, and then into like a produce buyer where you're buying all the product for the department, which is a stressful
So,
job, because if you ever forget anything, they're like, where's the lemons? You're like, oh no, like the main item you forgot, but you brought in some weird tropical passion fruit or something, or
that's
star
right.
fruit, right?
Jackfruit.
Yeah, jackfruit or something.
Kumquats. Where are the kumquats?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that whole experience really hit me on the head. Like, okay, even though, to flash back to those moments of not knowing what to do in school, I found my real passion of, food, health and wellness. I was part of,
Mm-hmm.
Whole Foods, which their core values added up to mine. And, just the culture was so different. Obviously, it's like founded on hippies.
Right.
It was based in Austin, Texas originally. And now everyone knows it. And obviously recently, Amazon owning it, it's changed quite a bit, but it's still,
Yeah.
it's great. And so what I didn't decide in school, I learned 10 times as much in my produce job. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what you get out a lot, out of life. It's you're not you get the basics in a classroom or
Right.
whatever a class you attend or things like that, but if you don't apply it to outside life, you're not going to get any results or anything, learning things like that. So
I totally agree.
yeah,
Yeah.
I had some great mentors that took me under my wing, and I'm like, I've never had that. Like, I love being coached, obviously being
Yeah.
an athlete. I'm like, okay, like nerding out on like, again, weird fruit, how to cook this veggie, like, so I could talk the lingo to customers.
Yeah.
So it was just a great experience. So I moved up to assistant team leader position.
That's so exciting.
And excuse me. And so that was incredible to lead a group of 20 people from all walks of life. And just to see different characteristics of them.
Mm-hmm.
And being one of the youngest, team leaders in the company at, what was it, 22,
Oh my
and
gosh.
you're with people that have 20 years plus, and you're like trying to talk to them like, hey, this, and some of the time it's like, you're not, the saying, fake it till you make it, but sometimes you had to. It's like you gotta, but most importantly, Kristin, as you know me, it's the connection, it's the human connection. So I wouldn't talk all business. I would find out, what these people were about, what did they enjoy, but also studying leadership too. It's like, what makes a great leader? We hear, okay, oh, I hate my manager. Well, what's the difference between a manager and a leader? A manager manages people and hey, we need, and a leader leads, hey, and gets feedback from the team. So I dug into, some great leadership articles, different types of books and things like that, but also having that mentorship really like had a great foundation for me to succeed. Sorry, my voice is like going.
Oh, and you know what? Like your story is telling me, you learned a lot too about like people and like communicating with from your dad. Your dad is such an excellent communicator, and, sitting here talking to you, I just think, oh my gosh, your dad is a lot like that. But I'm excited too about the fact that I had mentors, and you take the initiative to invest, and being the best communicator that you can and trying best at your job. And I love that about you.
And it's, it's such a game changer when you can connect with humans, because people want to connect, and and that willingness to go the extra mile and find out, about your coworkers' families or their interests goes a long way. And then they start working harder for you, and that's what great leadership is like, no, I'm not like, used to love walking in and like my team just knows what to do. It's boom, boom. Hey, they're coming to me. Hey, what do you think about that? And really truly empowering the people around you,
Yeah. So. Yeah. Oh my gosh. John, you should write a book. We can go on book tours together.
Yeah.
I'll help you. Help me. We'll go on together. Our family will only have one. Go to both of them.
So true. So true.
Oh,
so yeah.
Exciting. And so that was I remember too, when you started working for Whole Foods, and I was like, and Whole Foods was so new at the time. The timing was amazing that you started working before they became this huge empire, in a good sense. I just look at how many came after Whole Foods too. You had, Trader Joe's was always there, but had Sprouts and Mother's and all of these that like Whole Foods led the way, and they still do. I remember in third grade going to with the Girl Scouts to Whole Foods down in Irvine, and we went on a tour. We went on a tour of Whole Foods, because it is a tour, it's such an amazing, like, dynamic store, dynamic grocery store. It's amazing.
It's really the experience, right? You think about it, and why do people, go certain places? It's more the experience over anything. So people remember getting a sample at Whole Foods. The guy, John in produce, just sampled, them some unique item that's in season. He referred them to something they could cook with it. and now they're buying it and then they're out the door and they
Yeah.
finish it or they cook something and then they're wanting to come back. So
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
it's such a game changer, like you're saying, is it's still super relevant because of the experience. And then now with Amazon owning it, it's, groceries at your front door. How convenient is that? Plus
Yeah,
you're getting the same great quality right on your doorstep. So
right. You just don't have the samples. And then
yeah,
someone telling you what you could prepare with this fruit, which is
exactly.
important. I love that.
Exactly. So yeah, so from that team leader position, I went on the other side of the business, the produce distribution side. And that was eye-opening because it was the relationships with the farmers, getting it into distribution, and then distribution out to accounts.
Wow. Oh my
So that
gosh.
was really eye-opening for me.
Oh my gosh. I can imagine. And
And
and especially during these times we hear about these stories, now with
mhm,
farmers, during COVID. And and I can't even imagine, like that is a whole other side of the whole food industry, that is just, you could probably write a book about,
yeah,
another book.
there's actually a good book, and I highly recommend it. It's
Oh yeah.
called it's called Thanks a Thousand,
Mm.
and it's this guy that thanks everyone that has made his cup of coffee.
Oh.
So like
Oh.
you're saying, there's so much that goes into, say, a packaged salad, right?
Yeah.
Goes from the farm to a processor, out to distribution, and then out to retail.
And the packaging, don't forget
Yeah,
packaging,
exactly. In the packaging. Yeah,
the
which,
art, the
yeah,
artwork.
yeah.
Oh my gosh, what was the name of that book again?
It's called Thanks a Thousand.
Oh, okay, I'm gonna have to pick it up. I
Yeah.
love that. Oh my gosh. I really, and I really think that there's so many people that, we have no idea that are involved that so deserve our praise, because we couldn't do it. I mean, farmers do, but we could not, people in the city and us, we could not do all of this.
Hmm.
It's more than a full-time job,
Exactly.
and
And
we have so much more to be grateful for than we even realize, that you
yeah.
probably realize now because you work in that industry.
Hmm. Hmm. And
Yeah.
it goes such a far, deeper and deeper. And there's a saying, from farm to table, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even in the restaurant world, it's, oh, what's farm to table? So fresh you could taste it, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
so local you could taste it. That's a Whole Food saying right there.
Yeah.
And just the booming organic culture, that's
Yeah.
transpired. So to bring up packaging, actually my job after the produce, we're kind of like going in reverse way. It's like I started
That's
in
right.
retail and I
That's right.
went to the distribution, and now I actually spent 2 years in the packaging industry.
Oh,
Few times.
wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I worked for a broker here locally, and we represented about 25 manufacturers from across the US,
Oh,
and
wow.
we got those products into distribution, and then distribution into the end user. So any
Oh my
restaurants, things
gosh.
like
Wow.
that. I
So,
Go ahead.
I was gonna ask you though, how has COVID changed the food industry from your perspective?
So being in the food packaging is eye-opening because now we have COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Restaurants are still trying to survive. So it
Mm-hmm.
comes down to, how good is your to-go business, right? How good
Mm-hmm.
is your packaging to go? So with
Mm-hmm.
that being said, being in that industry, I was able to go in as a non-food food packaging expert with the food distributor, who he's the expert on the food, and then I come in and go, hey, your to go business here, this is what you're looking at, your to go bag, your container, things like that. because you want your to-go business, like we're saying, to have that same in-house experience, right? Some of those,
Mm-hmm.
the best places, you eat at with your family, I eat at with, the people listening. Think of those times where you've had a good experience. You take it home. You take
Mm-hmm.
the lid off. It's still hot. You look down. It's like, wow, that's the same burrito I have when I sit down at my, Baja fish tacos or something, and
Right.
that resonates with you, meaning you always have that option. Do I want to take it to go, or do I want to, meet up with a friend or eat with family? But I'm going to have that same experience. So the people
Yeah.
that are winning right now, the restaurants, they were already good before pre-COVID, right? So
Right.
now they're just elevating that. They could
Mm-hmm.
logo their bag. Like we used to say,
Mm-hmm.
hey, your bag is a walking billboard, it's Kristin
Yeah.
cupcakes, and
Yeah.
we all have trash cans around the house that we need it, we use it, you know. On trash day, I'm taking out the bag going, hey, I haven't been to Kristin Cupcakes in about a week. I need to, that's one of my favorite places. So it's that,
Oh my gosh.
yeah.
I didn't
So
even think about that.
it's different
Yeah.
marketing now.
Mhm.
Obviously, how I view it is, obviously I feel super sorry for the restaurants right now. They're getting
Yeah, I do
crushed,
too.
right?
Yeah.
But on the same,
The small restaurants,
yeah, and but on this flip side, there's some that are doing really well, and it's because of
Mhm.
like I'm saying, the to go orders are just flying in the door.
Mhm.
They're handling everything really well with the health, with um, maybe tamper resistant lids, maybe seal different bags, that no one could touch, and even pre-COVID, it was like, if we bring it up, it's like you had to have good packaging no matter what, because I mean, depends. It's like, okay, are we talking about mom and pop, or 3 to 4 chains? I'm talking about 3 to 4 chains, because they had Uber Eats, they had Grubhub, they had certain things
Right.
pre-COVID that they had to accept.
Right.
So that sticks out to me, and I'm looking around going, wow, I'm happy I'm not in the industry right now, because I'm sure it's calling left and
Right.
right. But it's a good thing, for my ex-colleagues, that keeping them busy.
Yeah.
But it's also thinking of who's winning in this, and obviously they want, at the end of the day, the customers to win, right? Because if the
Hmm.
customers win, they're going to circle back and order again. So
Right. Right. Well, and you want the small businesses to win too. You want the restaurants to win. You want the
mhm,
owners to win. You want them to stay open. You don't want them to have to close. There's
yeah,
so much involved, and I really feel like during this time, we have had a lot of tribalism, in our country. And I really feel like the upside of COVID is, I think it's built a lot of bridges in our
mhm,
communities, and I probably didn't think about all these things back then, about all the people that are involved in the food industry, and
mhm,
talking about people in packaging, and talking about people, not there's so much more involved, and I just
yeah,
really feel like this slowdown time, even though it has been a slowdown for everyone, I think it really helped us like think about life in a
yeah,
deeper sense,
yeah.
so, oh
And
my
keep
gosh.
us grounded in that,
Yeah.
go off what you're saying. And it's raising so much awareness, and it's,
Mhm.
changing people's perspective,
Yeah.
like we talked about. I don't think a lot of people think about their packaging, but now it's like, okay, I'm going to the sandwich place, like I can't touch it, like what's it, like it's just,
Right.
it's
Well,
so many dynamics, right?
I know. Well, I went to Hop Dotty
Uh-huh.
yesterday, and they don't even let you come into the kitchen, or come into the restaurant. they just have a little tent outside, you know, and they run back and forth and bring the food out. And they can't take cash anymore because like they're not big enough for the guardian to come by and, you know, with the cash. So they're just taking credit cards, you know, and I'm like, oh my gosh. But I remember them handing me a bag and it had like this cute little stamp and it said Hop Dottie. And I'm like, I don't remember that from last time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I love that though. You know, that made a big difference. I was like, oh, and then I opened the salad and I'm like, this is like the Caesar salad I have when I go to this, you know, go to the restaurant. And so it gave me a warm feeling.
Yes.
I'm like, the take-home experience was like it would be if I was there, but I wasn't home, you know. So I just
and it's incredible. It's there, like you're saying. There's so many people, so many we say concepts, really taking advantage of that time. So like, they're getting that extra stamp because it's like right when you open it, like you're saying, you just had that experience, right? And you're going to go back and back and back, and then after COVID's over, you know, they're already going to be equipped for when Uber Eats, you know, and all these other things. And they're just going to continue the businesses that are healthy and that are winning are just going to continue to be able to serve their customers. So it was just a great experience those 2 years to be in the packaging industry. Cause like what we're talking, we just talked so many different scenarios, and it's like, we're talking like trash, you know, like we're talking about, you know, but it's more than that. And it's things of making that global impact of where does our trash go? Do you want compostable? Do you want this? Is, you know, Southern California, we don't have a compost facility, but up in San Francisco, they've already been doing it for years. So why, you know, it's so many layers to packaging and plastic and that, you know, but at the same time, it's again raising that awareness through these times of, okay, how can we limit our waste? You know, what is our world going to look like 7 generations from now? You know, what impact are we making on the world? So through that experience with the packaging, traveling has always been on the map. So obviously I shared my soccer story. My first travel story was at age 12, and it tied in with the soccer. So my dad's best friend, Colin, lives in England.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
I love Colin.
So when I was around 10, I asked my parents, I'm like, and this is kind of bold for a 10-year-old, Mom and Dad, how has my sisters been to England and I haven't, you know? And as a 10-year-old, you don't realize like it's a plane ticket, it's expensive at that time. Like
oh my gosh,
exchange rate was like 2 to 1 or something, and I'm like, oh yeah, just could it be my birthday gift? I'm like, who? Like looking back, I'm like, who was that? Right?
You're a 10-year-old who saw his sisters go places, and you're like, whoa, what about me? Yeah.
So it was one of my goals with my dad. I was like, hey Dad, like, again, not knowing as a 10-year-old, by my 12th birthday, is there a possibility to go see Colin in England?
Yeah.
And so that was my first trip, and that was my 3 weeks in England. And that catapulted me through my soccer experiences. I've been to England 4 times, but then my long-term goal was always, hey, I need to get out and dedicate a year to just travel, you know? And I was looking at it, and I through Whole Foods to back it up, through that dark time, I was like, what am I going to do before, you know, I started Whole Foods? What are some of my goals? Obviously it was to get financially free. You know, there's a lot of people, college kids in debt, even still, you know, 10 years later, they're like, I don't know, you know?
Yeah.
So through Whole Foods and working really extremely hard to, I would say, work up the ladder, right, of the corporate ladder, I paid off my $42,000. Yeah.
Yay.
And I went and I kept moving, not necessarily for the money, but obviously money gives you access and freedom to live life on our terms, right? So I was always thinking like the biggest gift to myself would be an incredible travel adventure. And I was
Mm.
like going, I was working up, I was on that distribution job, and then through food packaging, I was inside sales and outside sales, sales making some good money, and, you know, kind of forecasting like, what am I going to do? So I came across this book, How to Travel on $50 a Day, by a guy named Nomadic Matt.
Oh my
And
God.
I ordered it on Amazon and it came. I was so excited. I'm like, what, is this the secret to my year of travel? Like $50 a day, that's nothing. Like he must have been living like on the side of the road or something. But
How did he do it? Yeah.
yeah, he's been technically a nomad for 10 years. And through those experiences, he put together like a breakdown of like, okay, Europe, he spent this amount, Asia, like the whole world, and I just was more, with my background, fascinated on Europe and maybe Asia, right? And I was like always
Right.
curious about Asia, and I'm like, John, like why don't you just go big? Like, yeah, not, I wasn't fearful of Asia, but I'm like, that's so different than the Western world, and the
Yeah.
Western
Yeah.
mindset versus Eastern mindset, completely different.
Right.
I read this incredible book and I'm like, I could do it. So in that meantime, and I don't want to come off the way, is to do things that we want to do, we got to make sacrifices, right?
Mhm.
So I'll back it up. In order to pay off that debt, I made a choice to live at home, which is kind of unculture, like not a US culture thing, compared to like Europe. A lot of kids from college go out and they sometimes never come back, or they move
Mhm.
back home to their city, but they don't live with mom and dad. But as you know, my parents are great. I have such a strong relationship with them, and family
Yeah.
is such a big core value,
Mhm.
um, that in to be able to do these things, it's like, what was I going to sacrifice, Kristin? Right? Was I going to go the ego route and have my own place and live it? No, it's like I wanted to sacrifice something so I could have an experience somewhere else in the world, And I think, as you know, being born and raised in Southern California, and just the opportunities we have in this country, and just realizing that after traveling, like, don't get me wrong, we are going through some incredible tough times, right? But on the flip side, we live in a country of opportunity, right? And there's so many new jobs out there, and there's so many people being creative right now. Like home-based businesses are
Yeah.
booming, and just think like,
Right.
so that's what I love about this podcast, is always thinking on the bright side, And so to get back to traveling, it was like, okay, what am I going to sacrifice? So I lived at home, and I still live at home because I love that relationship. And I've learned from others is like, you'll never get those relationships back, meaning with your parents, right?
Right.
And
Right.
it's not that I don't, I do want to have, my own freedom. I do have my own freedom, but it's, what are you going to sacrifice to get to where you need to be, to be successful? You hear business people talk about this all the time. What are you going to, rent a little crappy apartment for 100, or live on a couch, or live with your parents? The big influencers talk about that all the time. Are you going to live on someone's couch? Are you going to, so I figured I needed to sacrifice a little bit of my ego, right, for
Mhm.
a greater reward that's a lifelong, that's going to live with me the rest of my life. So through that, came across that book, was saving up already, and I had to calculate it, right? Everyone's going $50 a day. What does that come out to for a year? It's like 18,250, right? Seems seems
Jeez.
like a lot, right? Everyone's like
Right.
listening, like, wow, John, like you saved that much, or even my friends.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, it's actually cheaper than if I were to live out and pay rent.
Yeah. I can
And that,
imagine.
and
Yeah.
you and I both know how hard it is for local kids, or they just compared to Europe, you can't have your own flat or apartment. You have to have roommates or maybe 4 roommates, or live in some city that's still safe here in Orange County, but not, like mom and dad are like, are you sure that's a good part of town? I hear so many stories from my friends, and that's all just for their freedom, but I've become very comfortable just and full of gratitude for my relationship, for my family, to be able to give that foundation to do other things in my life, which is the traveling. So I did save that amount of money, a little bit more, I would say like 20,000. And I was talking for maybe 3-4 years. So like even back at Whole Foods, like I'm going to travel, and it's like,
I remember you doing that too.
And it's like
holidays.
And it actually hit me on the head. And this kind of goes into the health and wellness aspect. In 2016, I had kidney surgery, and it was life-changing for me in the fact that just because you think you're healthy doesn't mean you're healthy, and that gave me goosebumps. I was like, I'm this age and I'm already like in a major surgery, and I have so many unknowns. Like that drove me even farther to take this trip, So fast forward, I recovered from my surgery, was at the food packaging company. They were great to me in that whole process. They didn't even know, it was just like, I'm working hard, doing my thing, making sales, making great money. And one day I'm just like, I'm going for it. I tell my mom, she's like, I got your back, like mom or dad too, like the whole family is so happy. And like, I just was so overfilled with joy at that moment. I was like, wow, I've done so many great things. I've been through so many main things, and we really didn't touch on, mindset, but that's such a big thing that I've been hammering home with myself and others right now. Yes, it's difficult times. Yes, even for myself, like when everything broke out with COVID, it's been a roller coaster ride, but your mindset really dictates how you live, your results, what you, and again, to bring it up, the bright side, if we're thinking of bright things, even though I might have not such a great day, I'm getting back to those cores of the brighter thinking, the brighter lifestyle. Brighter days are ahead. Just because it's raining today doesn't mean it's going to be sunny, or it will be sunny tomorrow,
Right.
And so,
and the fact that it's raining and we still have our health, and we could still,
exactly,
we have a house, we have water, we have food, it's hard,
Yep.
But at the same time, it's such a great discipline, I think, that I know that you've mastered,
Yeah. And it's a daily thing that you have to work at. It's just like going to the gym, if you're not exercising your mind and expanding that, then that's when things creep in. That's when, things take over. But if you have those tools, and you're equipped with that, then that's the game changer. So, the traveling, I just was like, I got to do this. This is like incredible. So, I didn't know how to do it. I like read this book, I'm doing all this research, and I'm like, where do I start? And my best friend at the time was living in New York. So I'm like, I'm going to fly there, start there. And I just started looking at the map, Kristin, going, where do I want to go? Where do I want to go? I have this money. I'm on a budget, but not on a budget. Like, you're just like, this is like, it was like Christmas every day for like 3 months, you're like,
oh my gosh.
I was like, I'm in love with Europe. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go from New York to Iceland. Okay, wait, I'll be in Ireland in March. Let me do St. Patrick's Day. Like you start mapping it out, and it all comes together. And then one day I was like, okay, I'm going to go see your sister and Michelle and John in Lebanon. I'm that close. I'm in the Middle East. I
Right.
need to go and see Asia. I mean, obviously the Middle East is Asia, but I need to go to the Far East, like
Yeah.
I'm going to Japan, and I'm going to Taiwan. I'm doing Vietnam, I did 10 different countries in Asia,
Oh my,
and my mom's like, "Are you okay with that? Like, I'm kind of worried.
yeah.
And I go,
Like any
"Mom,
mom probably would be.
yeah, yeah, exactly." And I go, "Mom, I'm pretty sure just my thinking and my research is I think it's a little bit safer than Europe, because it's the different mindset and things like that. Nothing against Europe, it's similar to US here, but just different mindset and how culturally different, right?"
Hmm.
And um, so I had my date, gave my notice. My boss was like, "You're traveling for a year, like can I go with you?" Like, so many people were just like, "Who are you?" And some of you guys might know, that are listening right now, is like travel the last probably 5 years has become so accessible to so many, so many Americans,
Hmm.
Europeans, through student programs, family trips, solo trips, um, female or male solo travelers, female solo travelers. It's blowing up on social media right now. And there's so
Yeah.
many, like, I don't know what you call it, like famous travelers. So
Hmm.
not just, I wasn't just following Nomadic Matt, I was following like 3 or 4 others. And I became friends with this one girl, Jen, and she was so helpful on like travel and things like that. But that's what life's all about, is like
Yeah.
connections and finding your like-minded, right? Your
Yeah. Exactly.
who's gonna give you that extra energy when you have those days that you don't want to work on your dreams, to like, hey, like I'm gonna get inspired by this person. So
Exactly.
that's what I would do, like when I was utilizing my free time, instead of like watching TV or Netflix or what a lot of other
Hmm.
people do. I was working on my dream to travel the world. And
I
and
love that.
so I had my date, and I was like, I'm flying to New York, and when you hit that plane, you're just like, all that. And it's similar to what I shared with soccer. When you set a goal for yourself and you do all the steps and you're patient and you persevere, and I'm not saying it was an easy ride. I had to
Yeah.
come out of debt. I had to come to terms with living at home for so long, in an area where a lot of people, their parents pay for them to live out, or not high level jobs, people might say. But I didn't let that get to my head. I was like, let me do my work, let me be disciplined, let me go through this process, and the reward will come. And as I've gotten older and through these experiences, is I've fallen in love with the process of life so much. And that's what
Hmm.
it really is about. And
Yeah.
like, you could succeed and get this, and like I'm saying, like I hit that plane, but my first thought was like, John, I'm so proud of you for putting it out there,
Yeah.
putting a plan together,
Yeah.
doing it, but also doing it in a way of like inspiring others. And you haven't even touched down in New York. And
Oh my
you,
gosh.
you right, and I'm like getting goosebumps again. I'm like, when's the next trip?
I know. I know. I'm getting goosebumps too. Gosh.
So yeah, I flew into New York, and that's when the adventure started, and did about 6 months in Europe, twice. So I started in Europe, obviously, and some of my highlights were definitely like Portugal, Spain, Croatia's beautiful. And I think a lot of times when people travel, or like I look at these like so-called famous travelers, they don't talk too much about the people that they come across.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's almost a journey within a journey of life, right? So we have our whole life, but then you have this grand adventure that you're taking, and these people pop up, and it's definitely God sent. It's like how
Yeah.
did you know this, or this person just saved me, or this person just said, hey, like, why don't we go here? And, you
Yeah.
know, you don't overthink it when you're doing it, but like when you're in reflection mode going the other way, you're like, that made total sense.
Oh my gosh.
And it's like you're in these moments of like when I was in Asia, I was in India and I was flying from Thailand and I was so nervous to go to India. And I had friends growing up that were Indian and I'm fine with the people, I'm fine with the culture. But I did the wrong thing and got on Google and was like, how do I get to trying to get logistics going. And they're like, Delhi is so, all these horror stories. You're going to get robbed, this and that. And every step of the way, Kristin, leading up to that, I was like, the best experience, right?
Mm.
And that's like, that alone, I was so thankful for. But on that flight, I was so nervous. I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? I fly into Delhi, like, I was like, oh my gosh, like my stuff's going to get stolen. Like I get in this taxi, it's like a clown car and it's so small. We're going like maybe like 30 miles an hour slower than the rest of the traffic on the freeway. He's thinking he knows where my hotel is. And the hotel that got recommended was like from a friend I met in Cambodia, which was fine. That's how traveling, you meet people, they make
Right.
recommendations. They're not gonna like mess with you.
Right.
You've created that relationship. Hey, it's their home country. I end up in the Delhi slums, Kristin.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Oh geez.
changed my life forever, changed
Oh my
perspective. We're
gosh.
talking about gratitude. It's like every day I wake up, I think of those people. I'm like, they don't have access to water, they don't have clothes, they don't have food. Like just the things
Yeah.
I saw, it's like you don't even want anybody to experience that.
Yeah.
So I like drove into there and I'm like, this is not where my hotel. I'm looking around like
Yeah.
trying just to stay focused in the mindset of like, I'm gonna be okay. In the same sense, I'm like, all my stuff's gonna get stolen.
Oh
Like
wow.
I'm gonna not return to my family, my friends, my loved ones. But at the same time, like we're saying, you have this built-in view of yourself and the positivity of your
Mhm.
adventure and what has transpired before this.
Right.
So again, these random people pop up and they're so helpful. They're, hey, where are you? Where are you from? And I have throughout your travels, you always have your guard up, right? But
Mhm.
nothing where you're in panic mode all the time. You naturally have to have your guard up until something transpires where you feel comfortable to slowly let it down, but you never have it completely down.
Mhm.
And so I just put this trust in these locals, like, hey, and they connected me with like almost like a travel agency. And then you think like, am I going to get ripped off? And then
Oh my
he was working a side business on the side with his family. So before I know it, I'm in the Himalayas trekking for 3, 4 days in the most
oh
beautiful,
my God.
untouched mountains. And believe it or not, people are going to be like, you were there? Anybody in like our active military or military? I was in Kashmir, which is one of the most highly like places of combat for like the Pakistan and India border.
Oh my gosh.
But I wasn't even thinking about that. I was just like, I just need to get out of Delhi. I need to get out of the craziness.
Yeah.
I go up north into northern in India and just incredible experience. So, but before I set out, that's how Globetrot John came about. It's
I
someone who goes around frequently around the world.
oh my
And
gosh. And
it,
and John, we're gonna have to come back and talk about that story because I have never had this. We need to be part.
I love it.
Gosh, so if you can, I would love for you to come back and we could talk about further talk about Globetrot John and talk about water. I'm
I
like
would
so
love that.
excited. We have so many stories. So join us again. Oh my gosh. Thank you, John, for coming.
Thanks
Thank you,
so much
John.
for having me and
And
appreciate it. And shout out to everyone out there. Prayers, positive vibes, and keep thinking on the bright side of life, and
Yes.
positive energy sent your way. And thanks again for having me, Kristin. And you guys
And
have a great rest of your day.
thank you. And you're coming back, right? Can you come back?
I'm coming back for,
Good. Okay,
stay
good.
tuned for part 2. We're just warming
Yeah,
up.
I'm getting texts from the studio saying we have another show coming on.
I
Like,
love it. I
wait,
love it.
wait. So this never has happened, but we're gonna have part 2.
I love
And
it.
we're gonna schedule John to come back and talk about water and his further travels. Oh my gosh, it's so exciting. John, it's such a pleasure to have you here today. I really appreciate you being
Thanks,
here.
Kristin. Appreciate it.
And thank you for sharing with us your life lessons, your story of soccer, your story in the food industry and how it's affected COVID now. And we started talking about Globetrot John and your world traveling, and I can't wait for you to come back and tell the rest of your stories, because you have great ones, and just your life lessons, that you can share with our viewers is so amazing. I think you should have your own podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Kristin, and Bright Side of Life. Everyone keep our spirits high. We're in this together, and
Yes.
I'll be back for part 2. So thank you so much for having me today.
Oh, thank you, John. And thank you, everyone. And we are going to be coming back with John again today, or probably our next episode will be John. So yay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.